Hello, this is Ken. I like making things. Whether it's repainting my figures or making diorama displays, I love making things look awesome. My goal is to elevate my figures so they can shine on my display. Join my DIY venture as I ask myself the same question every week. Can I make it? Last week, I worked on Gambit and gave him the cell shading treatment. The original figure was alright, but he looks much cooler cell shaded. Check that video out if you haven't already. Today, I'm gonna work on Mister Sinister. I love this retro VHS packaging. I got this a while back, and I was gonna keep it sealed. But now that I feel less intimidated by cell shading, I feel like I should give it a try. They did a pretty good job with this figure, but there are a few things I want to fix. Let's deconstruct this figure. There's an FAQ on the paint and brushes I use in the description box below. First of all, as a kid, I thought Mister Sinister's design was the coolest. He's got the creepy colors, the awesome shredded cape. He just looks like the ultimate scary villain, you know? They captured his look pretty well overall. In fact, I think they based this figure on this particular shot here. The placement of the cell shading is pretty good, but the black they used isn't deep enough. I believe that's what's throwing this figure off. Another thing that's inaccurate is his cape. The strands are supposed to be more spaced out and more angular. And in X-Men 97, they streamlined his design even more. I actually really like his design in X-Men 97. So that's what I'm gonna do today. I'm gonna cell shade and update Mister Sinister to match his new look. Before I paint, I'm gonna use acetone to remove the cell shading first. When I look up how to strip paint off a figure, most people suggest using Q-tips. But maybe I don't have enough patience. I find that it's not that effective. I personally find that it's more efficient if I soak a piece of paper towel or napkin with acetone and rub that directly on the surface. I just have to make sure I'm not rubbing the same area for too long. And always use the clean side of the paper towel so the paint doesn't transfer back onto the plastic. Everything but his neck and the diamond on his chest can go. I don't have to do a perfect job stripping the paint, because I'm gonna paint over the entire figure anyway. But I do want to have as little distraction as possible. Look at that. Look how basic the figure looks. Let me rough off the surface a bit more to ensure that the paint will grip onto the plastic. Okay, let's paint. Let's start with the base color. In X-Men 97, he leans a bit more blue than purple in some scenes. So I'm going to use this peacock blue that appears to be the perfect shade of blue. Ooh, okay, I like how vibrant the blue is. Now onto the rest of his outfit. They are black, but I see this muted blue highlights on them. Or maybe they're actually blue but with black shading. Either way, I'm gonna save the black for last and do the blue first. I don't like using black too early. It's too harsh of a color. In X-Men 97, they got rid of his red wristbands and gave him dark blue gloves instead. It's a minor change, but I like it. It keeps the focus on his upper body and head. Another thing they streamlined is the shadow on the collar. Instead of an abstract shape, it's now just the bottom portion of the collar that's shaded. So let me cover up the entire inner collar first. It's gonna take a couple of layers. So let me go over the diamond chest piece and the belt in between layers. I've also started painting the cape off camera as well. It's actually quite difficult to paint as there's no good way to hold it without something else getting in the way. So what I ended up doing was sliding a piece of scrap paper in between the cape and painting it like this, and waiting for it to dry completely before doing another layer. Here's the base figure all painted. I'm going to coat the underside of the cape with a layer of matte varnish for some extra protection. Another reason is because I want to line the individual strips with a pen later, and I don't want the paint to clog up the tip of the pen. So the varnish should act as a barrier between the pen and the paint. Okay, now I can work on the details. Let's start by making the shoulder pads black. According to the reference images, the blue highlights kinda sit somewhere in the middle. The shape of the highlights seems to be quite abstract, so I don't have to focus too much on the shape. Instead, I just need to make sure the edges are clean. Okay, I like how this side looks. Let me try and copy that on this side as well. Not sure how I'm feeling yet. Maybe it'll look better once I give him his underwear. Was he pantless in the original cartoon? Or was he wearing clothes on top of his armor? Things I don't need to think about. But what I do need to think about is the shading on his torso. I've done quite a few by now. I used to do just thin lines down the sides. But over time, I prefer the shading to be a bit curvier. And I also like extending it to the backside as well, so it doesn't give out that tracksuit look. As for the muscle definition, I noticed that in X-Men 97, the lines are quite thick. The body in this figure is a bit on the boxy side, so I'm mostly gonna emphasize the chest muscles only. Otherwise, it may look even boxier. I don't really know how to approach the arms. They remind me of Gambit's boots, but more segmented. So I'm gonna do the Hasbro squiggly lines and hope for the best. As for the gloves, I'm gonna follow the shapes of his wrists and hands and paint the back half of them black. And also any other areas where shadows form. Okay, I don't love the blue on the gloves and legs. The shoulder pads look alright, but the gloves don't. I think the problem is that Mister Sinister's color palette changes depending on whether it's daytime, nighttime, or indoor. His colors are much more muted in this artwork here, but much more vibrant in the show at nighttime. Since Mister Sinister is a character that kinda lurks in the shadow or at night, I'm gonna base mine off his colors in these scenes here. These colors fit his character better, so I'm gonna replace my muted blue with this deeper blue. Ah, okay. This feels more like Mister Sinister already. Let me resume, and add the black shading to the rest of the outfit. His belt has those black stripes, just like Magneto, so let me add them in. I know you guys said that these lines are meant to represent the chrome finish, but they still look odd to me. Ah, okay, I think I'm figuring it out. Instead of like perfect rectangles, there's like a bit of a slant to some of these shapes. A bit of imperfections to make them look more organic. As for the legs, the placement of the black stripes are pretty consistent in the show. They're mostly on the inner thighs, connecting his underwear to his boots. There are a few here and there on the outer thighs as well. Alright, I'm happy with the thighs. All there's left are his boots. I'm gonna paint them black, but leave a stripe of blue highlights down the middle on each boot. According to the reference images, the highlights kind of follow the shape of his legs and feet, so I'm gonna use the black to slowly shape them until they look just right. The good thing about this method is that I can work on one side at a time, and I only really have to do one layer of black paint, whereas if I did it the other way around, painting the entire boots black first and then add the blue highlights, I will have to make sure the edges are clean and make sure the blue is fully opaque over the black, which would take a couple of layers of paint. Okay, I'm almost done. I just have to add those thin lines on his body. But this time, I'm going to use the brush instead of the micron pens. It's not that I don't like the pens, but I feel like I'm better with the brush. Because the bristles are soft, they tend to stay in the grooves when I apply pressure, and if I do slip, the paint is relatively easy to wipe off. Don't get me wrong, the pens are great too. I like using them for the finer details, but for lines like these, I'm worried that the tip will clog up on me. That said, I am going to use the pen on his cape. The pen works much better here in this case because it is much easier to glide the pen along the ridges than doing that with the brush. It's so hard to reach the underside of his cape. I'm gonna have to do it off screen. Be right back. On to the face. The face is pretty good. I love the little bit of blue highlights on his hair. I only want to make some minor changes. First, let me try some shading on the face. I'm using a very light purple. I'm gonna assume it's gonna dry slightly darker. Nope. Next, I'm gonna add a bit more of the finer black details on the face. This is what I did. I extended the thing on his chin up to his bottom lip, outlined his teeth a bit, added those little lines around his eyes, and outlined the diamonds on his forehead. That was very stressful to do. Here's Mister Sinister's face. You can't really see the shading. Oh well. But the black outlines added more dimension to his face. Alright, here's Mister Sinister all finished. The overall figure pops so much more, even though it's supposed to look more 2D. It's actually kinda funny that the blue I ended up using on the cape is pretty much the same blue that was on the original figure. But the bluer body does look better. The original figure is still pretty good in my opinion. Oh, I also added the white highlights on the diamond on his chest. That made the figure look cel-shaded. Overall, I enjoyed the painting process. The body was pretty fun to paint, but I did not enjoy doing the cape. Since it's glued onto the body, it was quite challenging to paint, and I had to wait for the paint to fully dry to prevent any contamination. I thought about cutting the cape to make it look more show accurate, but I like the way it looks here. It kinda adds to that creepy factor, and it also helps keep Mister Sinister upright. If I cut them shorter, he will probably be too back heavy. What do you think? Do you like what I've done? Let me know down below. The transformation isn't as drastic as say the X-Cutioner or Gambit, but I'm still very happy that I have a mostly show accurate Mister Sinister figure. I love his design so much. Too bad he was more of a secondary villain in X-Men 97. Okay, let's end this for the photo shoot. Look at him. He looks so cool. I love the size of this figure. Magneto should have been this size in my opinion. Another thing I love about this figure is that despite the design looking quite busy, he's still very eye-catching in the best way possible. The only negative thing I can think of is that there aren't that many dynamic poses for him to do. But it is fine. He looks great just standing there all spooky and creepy, especially when paired with Madeline Pryor, the Goblin Queen. I'm glad I started doing the X-Men figures. I've been avoiding cel shading for the longest time, and these figures allow me to dive headfirst and learn how to cel shade. And I can feel myself leveling up on a weekly basis. I haven't mastered it yet, as I still need plenty of references for each figure, but at least I'm not scared of it anymore. Give this video a like and subscribe to see me do more X-Men figures. There's still a few more to go. And until then, stay inspired and I'll see you next week. I can make it, so can you.